James Carter had always lived life on the edge. He was a cowboy in the wild Arizona territory, where the sun beat down relentlessly, and the land stretched for miles in endless shades of brown and gold. His days were filled with riding across dusty trails, tending to cattle, and occasionally doing work for settlers who needed someone brave enough to handle dangerous situations. James had a reputation in the frontier towns he passed through. He was clever, confident, and bold, someone who didn't shy away from risk. Yet, despite his outward confidence, James had a streak of curiosity that often got him into trouble. One hot afternoon, James rode into a small settlement on the outskirts of a canyon. The town was quiet, with only a few people moving about under the shade of the wooden buildings. James's purpose was clear. He was there to collect a debt from a wealthy settler named Thomas Merrick. Thomas had borrowed money from James several months ago, but had yet to pay it back. James was known to be fair, but he was also firm when it came to debts. Settlers learned quickly that ignoring him would only make matters worse. Thomas Merrick appeared nervous as James approached. He wiped his hands on a worn cloth, avoiding James's eyes. "James, I don't have all the money right now," Thomas said. "But maybe we can work something out." James frowned. "I don't have time for games, Thomas. You owe me. How much can you pay today?" Thomas swallowed hard. "Not enough. Not in cash. But I have something else. Maybe it will do instead." James raised an eyebrow. "Something else?" Thomas hesitated, then motioned to a young woman standing nearby. She was tall and calm, with straight black hair that reached her shoulders. Her dark eyes held a quiet strength. She can be your payment," Thomas said, almost as if he were afraid of his own words. James was taken aback. He had heard stories before of settlers offering goods, horses, or cattle to settle debts, but never a person. The offer made him uneasy. "You mean she?" James asked, nodding toward the young woman. Thomas nodded nervously. "She's from a nearby Apache tribe. I don't know how she feels about this, but I can't pay you in gold. Please, just take her and let it settle the debt." James's mind raced. He had never intended to accept such an offer, and yet a part of him was curious. Who was this woman? Why did she seem so composed in such an unusual situation? Still, he felt a moral weight pressing on him. Something about this didn't feel right. But the deal had been made, and James had a reputation to uphold. He reluctantly agreed, telling Thomas he would take the woman to a nearby trading post and ensure she returned safely to her people. The woman, whose name James soon learned was Ahioka, did not speak much during the first part of their journey. She rode silently beside him, her posture straight and confident. James found himself glancing at her from time to time, noticing the sharp intelligence in her eyes and the way she carried herself with a quiet dignity. He had expected fear, confusion, or resentment, but instead he saw calmness and awareness that surprised him. As they traveled across the rugged terrain, the desert stretched endlessly in every direction. The sun climbed high into the sky, baking the earth beneath them. James and Ahioka passed rocky cliffs and dry washes, and occasionally they saw distant figures on horseback, likely scouts from her tribe. Each time, the scouts would lower their heads respectfully and ride on. James began to notice subtle hints that Ahioka was not an ordinary woman. There was something about the way she was treated by others, even strangers, that hinted at a position of importance. The first night, they made camp near a small creek. James built a fire, and Ahioka sat nearby, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. James tried to make conversation, asking her questions about the land, her life, and the people she came from. Ahioka answered softly, never revealing too much. But her words carried wisdom and experience far beyond her years. James realized that he was learning more from her in a few hours than he had learned from most people in months. She spoke about survival, about respect for the land, and about the balance between humans and nature. He felt a mix of admiration and unease. Who was this woman, really? The following days, their journey continued across hills and valleys. They faced challenges, sudden storms, rough terrain, and the constant threat of wildlife. Through it all, Ahioka remained composed, helping James navigate and sharing knowledge about edible plants, water sources, and safe trails. James started to see her not just as someone he had taken to settle a debt, but as a person with depth, intelligence, and strength. Small clues about her true identity began to emerge. When they approached areas near Apache camps, James noticed that scouts and hunters would quietly acknowledge her, sometimes whispering among themselves before riding off. The respect shown to her puzzled James, and he started to question what he had assumed at the beginning of their journey. Ahioka, he realized, was no ordinary member of her tribe. There was a presence about her, a quiet authority that others seemed to recognize instinctively. One afternoon, as they rested under the shade of a mesquite tree, James decided to speak candidly. "Ahioka, I have to ask, who are you?" "Really?" he said, trying to keep his tone gentle. Ahioka looked at him steadily, her dark eyes calm but firm. "I am who I am," she replied simply. "The rest you will see soon enough." James frowned. Her answer did not satisfy him, yet there was a weight in her words that made him pause. He felt a growing sense of respect and caution. Whatever he had thought of this journey when he accepted her as payment, it was now clear that he was dealing with someone extraordinary. As they continued, James reflected on his own actions. He had accepted a human being as payment, a decision, he now realized, could have serious consequences. He had underestimated the importance of understanding and respecting others, and he was beginning to see that courage alone was not enough. Respect and wisdom mattered just as much, if not more. That evening, the sun set in a blaze of orange and red, casting long shadows across the desert. James and Ahioka set up camp, and for the first time, there was a sense of shared understanding between them. James knew he had to navigate carefully from this point forward. The woman he had accepted as payment was not merely a companion for the journey. She was a person of influence, knowledge, and power. And he had no idea yet just how far that influence extended. James lay awake that night under the stars, thinking about the days ahead. He knew that when they reached her people, everything would change. The respect others showed her hinted at a truth he could not yet fully comprehend. And as much as he wanted to prepare himself, he realized that he was entering a situation larger than anything he had faced before. The journey had started as a simple task collecting a debt, but it was turning into something entirely unexpected. James felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. He had learned that assumptions could be dangerous, and that courage alone was not enough to navigate the complex web of human relationships and tribal customs. For now, he had to trust Ahioka and the instincts that had served him well in the past. The desert was vast, but it was also filled with lessons for those willing to see them. And James knew that in the days to come, he would learn more about courage, respect, and understanding than he ever had before. Little did he know, the revelation of Ahioka's true identity was only a day or two away, and when that truth came to light, it would change everything he thought he knew about power, loyalty, and the consequences of one seemingly reckless decision. When James Carter and Ahioka finally reached the Apache camp, the atmosphere shifted immediately. The camp was nestled in a valley surrounded by low hills, with small huts and open spaces where people moved about with a quiet rhythm. Children played near the edges of the camp while elders tended to daily tasks, and hunters returned with small game. The moment Ahioka stepped into the camp, a wave of respect followed her. Scouts and hunters paused, gave subtle nods, and moved aside as if she were someone important, though James still didn't understand why. James felt a sudden knot in his stomach. He had accepted her as payment for a debt, and now he realized he might have walked straight into danger. What if her people were angry? What if they saw his actions as a serious insult? His hand instinctively hovered near the pistol at his side, though he hoped it would never be needed. Ahioka led him to a slightly elevated hut near the center of the camp. From a distance, James noticed a figure emerge, an older man, with strong features, sharp eyes, and an air of authority. This must be the chief, James thought. His heart beat faster as he realized the full gravity of the situation. The chief approached quietly, his gaze fixed on James. James dismounted, tipping his hat politely, though he felt unsure if that gesture would be enough to show respect. The chief's eyes studied him carefully, as if measuring the weight of his character. "Who is this man, Ahioka?" the chief asked, his voice calm but firm. "This is James Carter," Ahioka replied softly. "He brought me here safely, and he means no harm. I can vouch for him." James swallowed hard, feeling a mix of relief and tension. I did not know her true identity," he said quickly, trying to explain. "I accepted her as payment, thinking it was a simple matter. I meant no disrespect." The chief's eyes did not change, but the weight behind them made James feel as if every word he spoke was being measured for truth. For a long moment, there was silence, broken only by the soft rustling of the wind through the trees. Then, surprisingly, Ahioka stepped forward. "Father, he has been honest. He has treated me with respect during our journey, and he has learned quickly about the land and our ways. He is not a man of malice." Arwunding. The chief's gaze softened slightly, though he remained cautious. "Words are easy," he said. "Actions are what show the truth." James realized that the chief was right. He had acted with care during the journey, but he had still made a serious mistake by agreeing to take her as payment. He knew he had to show through his actions that he could be trusted. Over the next few days, James stayed in the camp, observing and learning. He saw how the Apache people lived, how they hunted, farmed, and respected the land around them. He watched Ahioka interact with others, and it became clear why she commanded such respect. She was intelligent, confident, and compassionate, able to listen and guide without forcing her will. James began to understand that his presence in the camp could be a bridge or a threat. He chose to act with humility and openness, helping where he could, listening carefully, and showing genuine interest in learning. Slowly, the tribe began to accept him. Elders asked him questions about the wider world, and hunters discussed trade routes with him. Even the children, curious and playful, would occasionally approach him, laughing as he attempted to show them tricks with his rope or help them spot birds in the trees. Ahioka continued to guide him, teaching him not just practical skills but also the values of respect, patience, and understanding. She explained how the tribe valued courage, but not recklessness. Wisdom and thoughtfulness were more important than brute strength. James found himself growing in ways he had never imagined. One afternoon, James helped prepare a small trade caravan. Settlers from nearby towns had come to exchange goods, and James's experience as a trader became useful. He navigated negotiations carefully, ensuring fairness and respect for both sides. The chief and other elders watched closely, and James realized that his actions could build trust or destroy it. He was determined to choose wisely. It was during one of these exchanges that James finally learned the full truth of Ahioka's status. One of the elders spoke to him privately, explaining that Ahioka was the daughter of the chief, a position that carried immense responsibility and respect within the tribe. The realization struck James like a lightning bolt. He had accepted someone as payment without knowing she was the chief's daughter. The potential consequences of his actions could have been disastrous. Yet, despite the gravity of the situation, James felt gratitude more than fear. Ahioka had guided him, and the tribe had judged him based on his actions rather than assumptions. He realized that respect and honesty could outweigh even the most serious mistakes if approached with care and humility. Over the following weeks, James worked to earn the tribe's trust further. He helped build shelters, assisted in hunting trips, and shared knowledge about the terrain beyond the valley. He learned the Apache ways of storytelling, music, and craft, and he began to understand the deep connection they had with the land. Every day, he grew more aware of his own assumptions and the limitations of his previous understanding of the world. Ahioka became a guide not only in practical matters but also in understanding people. She taught James about leadership, integrity, and the importance of listening before acting. Through their conversations, James realized that he had been lucky in more ways than one. The young woman he had once seen as a payment was a teacher, a friend, and a powerful influence in her community. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, the chief called James to sit with him near the center of the camp. James felt nervous but ready to face whatever conversation awaited. "James Carter," the chief began, "you came to us with a mistake, but you have shown that you can learn from it. You have acted with courage, honesty, and respect. These are qualities that matter more than any debt or misunderstanding." James nodded, feeling both relief and humility. "I have learned much," he said quietly. "I did not understand at first. I see now that there is more to respect and courage than I knew." The chief smiled faintly. "You are correct. Remember that the actions of a single person can ripple through a community. Your willingness to learn and act with care has brought you here safely, and it has brought understanding between us." James realized how far he had come. What had started as a reckless choice to accept someone as payment had turned into a journey of growth, understanding, and respect. He felt grateful for Ahioka's guidance, the tribe's patience, and the lessons of the land itself. Before long, James prepared to leave the camp and continue his life in the wider territory. The bond he had formed with Ahioka and her people would remain with him forever. The chief gave his blessing, and Ahioka walked beside him to the edge of the camp, where the open desert awaited. "You have learned much," she said softly, her eyes reflecting both pride and warmth. "Remember that courage alone is not enough. Respect, understanding, and humility are what make a true leader." James nodded. "I will remember," he replied. "I will not forget what I have learned here." As he rode away, the sun rising behind him, James felt a sense of transformation. He had come to the Apache camp by chance, through a decision he now understood could have been disastrous. Yet, through respect, honesty, and guidance, he had turned that choice into a lesson that would stay with him forever. He looked back once, seeing the camp nestled in the valley, the people going about their lives, and Ahioka standing proudly among them. James knew that life in the frontier would continue to be unpredictable and challenging, but he now carried a deeper understanding of people, culture, and the strength found in humility and respect. The journey had started with a mistake but ended with wisdom, friendship, and a renewed sense of purpose. He rode on, leaving the camp behind but carrying its lessons with him, knowing that the desert, the people, and the experiences he had shared would forever shape the man he was becoming.